She felt there was something right behind her. She felt her body go cold. She was terrified. Her legs went weak, like they belonged to somebody else. Every nerve urged her to run. And with that, the cat jumped free and they both ran. Just to let you know, this week's video is a little bit different. Some of you had told me you'd prefer no video. So this episode I'm going to trial that. Let me know in the comments below if you prefer this or if you want your video back. Now back to the story. Tracy, from a young age, had visited historic houses with her mother, which fueled her obsession with old buildings and halls. So when she grew older and started applying for jobs, she was delighted when she got a call offering her first full-time permanent job at one of Wales's most magnificent manor houses. And at a time before the internet, Tracy went off to a local library to read up on the building she'd be working at. The night before, she was so worried and excited, and after a pretty sleepless night, she arrived at the manor house. Llancaich Fawr, an incredible Grade 1 listed 16th century house nestled into the countryside on the edge of a village of Nelson, near Treharris. She was full of nerves as she walked through the huge front door on her first day at the new job. Being young, she kept to herself, hiding behind her shyness. But she didn't need to worry. Her colleagues were friendly and supportive, and the building was like something out of her dreams. The atmosphere of the manor was so welcoming. Weeks went by, and Tracy loved everything about the job, until one day, a member of staff told her it was considered by some to be the most haunted building in Wales. Every day at lunchtime, the staff would come back to the staff room and eat their packed lunch, and chat about how the building was that day. Silent, something stirring, or something a bit uneasy. Tracy was intrigued but sceptical, as she worked in the visitor centre and only occasionally went over to the manor house. When she heard the stories about strange goings on, she put the noises down to the old building moving or about a draft blowing through the gaps and the voids, as she had not experienced anything herself. One evening, Tracy was alone in the manor house. She was the only one working, and all the external doors were locked. She was preparing to close up, but then the hair stood up on the back of her neck. She stopped moving. There was a sound. Something falling? No. Footsteps. Footsteps were walking on the floor above. She relaxed slightly, thinking it was another member of staff who was in the building, and they just forgot to tell her that they were working there. She slowly made her way up the stairs. She looked everywhere. There was no one. Tracy told herself it was her imagination, but after that, she was very uneasy and stayed working in the visitor centre. Until one day she had to cover the ghost tours in the evening. This was going fine until one night, after doing a ghost tour inside the manor, she talked to the visitors, answered their questions, and then walked around checking all the customers had gone. The front door was locked, and all the other external doors were locked. The house was now empty, and Tracy switched off the lights. Soon as she did, she noticed how silent the building was, and started to walk to the door. She stopped, and remembered she had to move Thomas the cat to the parlour. She sighed to herself, and turned round to go back. She knew the way in the dark, so she didn't put any of the lights back on and just used her torch. She walked through the room and saw the cat sitting on the chair. She scooped up Thomas and then carried him through to the parlour. That's when she heard it. A sound echoed through the house. It was the sound of someone blowing a raspberry in her ear, and a soft touch on her face. She jumped, almost dropping the cat, batting at her ear, thinking it was some sort of insect, but just then, the cat started acting uncomfortable. Its fur stood on end. Surrounded by the darkness, he hissed and gazed at something invisible behind her. She felt her body go cold. She was terrified. She felt her legs go weak, like they belonged to somebody else. Every nerve urged her to run, and with that, the cat jumped down and they both took off, sprinting through the dark rooms and out of the manor house's front door. The next day, she told her colleagues what had happened, and half expected them to say, "That's just the pipes," or "It's this," or "It's that." But some of the group did laugh. But some said in the darkness they heard footsteps, or the sound of crying, chatting and giggling. They said it's terrifying at the time, but it doesn't feel threatening. Tracy wasn't so sure. She was starting to get an uneasy feeling for the building. A few months later, Tracy was alone in the locked visitor centre, when again, she heard noises. She listened again. It was the sound of saucepans being hit with a wooden spoon. She headed towards the locked cafe's kitchen. Tracy, thinking someone might have accidentally been locked in there, ran over and unlocked the kitchen door. She expected to see someone happy to see her, but when she scanned the room, she saw it was empty. There was no other access. All the doors were closed and locked. She felt this was strange, but there would be an explanation. She left the room and began to walk away. She stopped. The pans had started banging again. She rushed back, thinking that she'd catch someone playing a trick on her. She burst through the door, smiling, but the pans fell silent again. Her smile faded. She searched the room again, and again she found nothing. She left the room, and again it happened, and again. She stopped behind the door, waiting for the sound to start, and as soon as it did, she threw the door open. But nothing. This happened 2 more times before she gave up, and locked the door, and she walked back to the office, leaving the pans banging behind her, with a feeling of unease rising inside her. She told one of her colleagues, Ed Williams, and he went quiet and thought for a moment, and then looking her in the eyes, he told her. He told her about something that had happened to him in the house. He said, it was a summer evening. It wasn't dark, and there was a function going on in the manor. I was helping to bring in the dishes from the visitor centre, and as I walked down the garden, I looked around, admiring the flowers and how everything looked in the light, when I noticed a figure with a stovepipe hat and a black cloak, running towards me like his life depended on it. He ran straight past me. He looked as solid as anyone, and it was a bright sunny day. Tracy didn't know what to do with this story, but now she openly admits that there's a possibility of something unworldly going on in that building. Well, that'll do it for today, but to let you know, there are a number of ghosts said to roam the house, the visitor centre and the grounds according to the documented sightings over the decades. These include Ed's Victorian Shadow Man, Mattie, who was a housekeeper during the 19th century, who roams the halls of the manor in her dress, brushing up against the antique furnishings in the room where she met her end. There are a number of children heard, especially the ghost of a little boy who pulls on clothes and hair. Apparently, the boy sadly fell from one of the upper floor windows and has remained at the manor ever since. And he's possibly one of the culprits of the raspberry blowing. More famously, there is the spirit of Colonel Edward Pritchard, He's seen sometimes dressed in Civil War uniform. Seems to be contemplating his support for the king, as later he changed sides to join the parliamentarians, and he seems to lament his choice. There is also much talk about a carved stone that's hidden within the manor's wall. Some people say it was put there to help ward off evil, but others are convinced that it's a curse on the manor and another reason why the ghosts reside there. A team of paranormal investigators took photographs in Matty's bedroom. As it was very dark, nothing was seen until the team reviewed the photos. And what was caught is known as one of the best photos of a full-bodied apparition captured to date. Given the historical background of the manor, it seems to be a Civil War soldier, dressed as a parliamentarian, or otherwise known as a Roundhead. And Louise Griffith, who works at the manor and leads the ghost tours, said on one of her tours, quote, "We heard the loud footsteps, and then a few people screamed. So I started to talk more quietly, so we could hear anything else that was going on. And then we heard a noise that I've never heard before. The windows of the house don't open. The doors are super thick and heavy. But suddenly, we heard a door slowly creaking open. So I screamed myself, and everyone ran across the room, including me, away from the noise. Then two things came together, and honestly, I've never been as scared in my life. The door creaked again, and then heavy footsteps were coming towards us down the corridor. I was absolutely convinced that something was going to walk through the door. It sounded so real. That was the most scared I've ever been in this house, because it was so real." The manor, Llancaich Fawr, situated in the Rhymney Valley in South Wales, is known as one of the top 10 most haunted places in Great Britain. It was built around 1530, which means this manor house predates the Acts of Union between England and Wales. That was 1536. Almost every room in the manor has a story to tell. Many things have been seen, felt and smelt by people who work in the manor, as well as those who come to visit. It's often said you know when someone is near, as you can smell lavender, violets and sometimes roast beef in the air. The house was used as a local courthouse in 1645 when Colonel Edward Pritchard owned it. The house is now a living history museum where you can step back in time to 1645. You can visit and go on ghost tours too if you're so inclined. Let me know your thoughts on the building. If you think ghosts are real, or these are just memories in time imprinted on the fabric of the place. Maybe you've been here and you have a story of your own. Let me know in the comments. Also, if you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe. That'll do it. Take care.